So Polk's goal had been, his vision had been expansion. That's what he won the election of 1844 based on, the promise of expansion. And so he sends Slidell to represent U.S. interests, and he's rejected in Mexico City. And so many historians argue that Polk, he worked to incite a conflict with Mexico so that the U.S. could have the territory that it wanted, the California territory and the New Mexico territory. Remember that after he won the 1844 election, he immediately called for the annexation of Texas, and Congress approved that annexation of Texas and adding of Texas as a territory in the Union. Okay, so when Slidell is rejected in Mexico City, Mexico says no to any offers to purchase territory. Polk then sends troops to the Rio Grande, what he says is the border between the U.S. and Mexico, that now Texas is the United States is. Okay, well, Mexico says the Nueces River is the border between Texas, which is now American, and Mexico. And so there is this border dispute, which can be argued that the president created a dispute. So he sends Zachary Taylor to the border, and there's a conflict. Blood is spilled. It's unclear who moved first, but when American blood is spilled on what Polk says American blood is spilled on American soil, he asked Congress for a declaration of war in very sensational speech. There are some people who oppose a declaration of war. One, a representative in the lower house from Illinois, Abraham Lincoln, asked, okay, if American blood was spilled on American soil, then show us the spot. Give us the latitude line. Give us the evidence. This is called the spot resolution, and Lincoln represents a faction that is vehemently opposed to a war with Mexico because it's going to draw the nation into further conflict over the division of slavery. Will slavery expand into any new territories that come from another country? And of course, the right to self-determination of these people. There are those who stand for that. So there are sectionalists, and this is really big for you guys to get, the sectionalist divisions as it relates to the war. If you look at that Missouri Compromise and you look at the portion of the Louisiana Purchase that remains for slavery to expand, it seems logical that Southerners would be looking into Mexico for potential expanding of agriculture, and even many are looking into the Caribbean and Haiti and the Dominican Republic and territories farther in the Yucatan into South America, hoping to expand farming because northern territories, and hoping to expand slavery as an element of farming because now the northern part of the nation has abolished slavery. And so that's so you have Southerners who, for the most part, are in support of the war with Mexico, and their hopes are to gain land. Okay, and then you have a section of the northern populace that is opposed to the war because of its divisiveness. They fear the expansion of slavery. So abolitionists are going to be strongly against this war with Mexico. So divisions over the war, and most of them are surrounding the issue of slavery. Polk pushes for war, and Congress approves a declaration of war. We're not going to go into battles here. You can know that you should know that John C. Fremont is an American who goes into California and declares he leads an independence movement in California. So it's the people of California that rebel against the Mexican government, and it's not so much a U.S. invasion into California. California during the Mexican-American War was for a time an independent nation. The Bear Flag Revolt led in a declaring of California as an independent nation. And then when the U.S. pushes into Mexico City, that's when Mexico feels the pressure to negotiate, and the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo is signed that ends the conflict. Many Southerners and even Polk wants to perhaps push further and get more land, take more land, more of the fertile soil inside of Mexico, but with some hesitance. The U.S. Congress approves the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, and a large number of Mexicans become citizens of the United States with this treaty. In 1852, when Franklin Pierce is president, the U.S. will sign the Gadsden Purchase Treaty, and the Gadsden Purchase Treaty will add the last bit of land that then makes up the contiguous, what will be the contiguous 48 states. So our current boundaries are complete with the Gadsden Treaty Purchase. Will set the final borders. The U.S. will pay Mexico $15 million for the territory of California, New Mexico, that comes in that Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo. The gold rush. So many more Americans will venture west when gold is discovered in 1848. It's discovered, and then it becomes widely known in 1849, and those prospectors that go out into California to get rich quick and to prospect for gold are called 49ers. And then the first Asian Americans come into the U.S. in large number in the West as a result of the California Gold Rush. So quite interesting, a new shaping of an American identity. The West and Manifest Destiny is a continued part of the evolution of the American identity, and westward expansion is an integral part of that. And immigration is an integral part of the American identity, and it's quite interesting that a new segment of American immigrants that will face great discrimination that lasts far into the 20th century. You can look at the Executive Order 9066 that relocates the Japanese in the West, and the Supreme Court case Korematsu versus the U.S. So the continued discrimination that Asian Americans face doesn't go away. It's not something that is it's not a problem that's quickly solved in the West. And then, of course, you're going to see discrimination against Mexican Americans out in the West. And then you see that also during World War II with the Zoot Suit riots out, just kind of going over some synthesis kind of things here. So this concludes period 4 and our inquiry into the first half of the 19th century, from Jeffersonian democracy to Jacksonian democracy, which are so much the same. And then you have that surge of nationalism with divisive sectionalism over tariffs, over the national bank, over abolition. Andrew Jackson is the first president who has to deal with suffragettes, who has to deal with women's rights activists. And of course, Andrew Jackson and the Democrats are strongly pro-slavery, and they're advocates to silence the abolitionist movement. So lots of threads that make up the fabric of America in the first half of the 19th century. Reform movements, the temperance movement, reform in education, reform in the prison system and the healthcare system. And women are right in the middle of the change. So a very interesting section of American history from 1800 to 1848.